So let's see here. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the GUI elements, and I'm pretty sure you've all done GUI programming. I mean, in Java or what other environments you've been working with, and in some ways it's really no different in Unity, especially the new version of Unity. I mean, you are familiar with the different GUI controls. You know, you could put text labels, buttons, and things like that. The concept is really similar to other programs that you do, that you place these things on a canvas that is kind of like the window. You arrange them, and then these things can be interactive. So that's what we're going to be looking at really quickly here. This is a completely new system, at least for me, because we had been working on Unity programs since I think I started working on it in version 2.5 or something like that. There was an old GUI system that they used back then that was a bit clunky, a bit different way of thinking about things. But with, I think, version 4.6, which for me is quite recent, they very much built up a GUI system that is very familiar. I think everyone will find it easy to use. So what I'll do is that I'm going to show two features, two things mainly. One is the idea of having a heads-up display. How do you add the heads-up display into your environment? So something that follows you as you go around to give you some feedback on what's happening, like health or something like that. And then the other thing is, what if you want to open up a menu of some sort? So these are the two things I want to show. And let's just start by making a little bit of an environment, just the absolute basic one, with our plane here, and make it a big plane, and then we'll put just a box there to have something, and put the box there, and in the center there's our box. We rotate the box a little bit. And then I'm going to change also just get a different environment, get the different skybox, maybe for this one maybe. So that's our environment, and we will add a first-person controller. And here's the first-person controller, and we'll put that one also at the beginning on there. So now we have this environment, and we can walk around. And what we want is that we want to have information about our own state as we are walking around, and we can do that using some kind of a heads-up display GUI. And to add GUI elements, then I can find all GUI elements in the game object menu. These are just regular game objects, in fact. And you can see the UI elements. So these are all game objects that can be added into the project hierarchy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an image in there. And you notice when I add the image that another game object got added as well. Actually, two game objects got added. There was also a canvas object that got added. This is because GUI elements cannot exist without the canvas. They need to be placed on something. And think of the canvas like a window, and they have to belong to a window of some sort. So if I have not put the canvas in my project, then when I add a GUI element, the canvas will automatically be created for me, and then the GUI element becomes the child. I also got this event system added, and you don't have to think about that for now, but just it's basically adding some capabilities to your project that allow messages to go back and forth between objects. So now I have the image, And I'm going to take a look at that a little bit here. So first of all, I'm going to take a look at the canvas. The canvas has a number of properties. And one thing that we can take a look at here is where the canvas is being, or how the canvas is being rendered. That's under render mode on the canvas component here. We can select how or kind of when the canvas is being rendered in the scene. And we have some options here. We have screen space and world space. If I choose world space like this, that means that the canvas becomes like any other regular object in the scene, and it is just placed in a location in the scene, and that's where it's going to be rendered, like any other cube or any other model. This means that you could potentially place a canvas with interactive elements like buttons and things like that right on top of the scenery. And you can literally walk up to it and then start interacting with it as if it was part of the scene. This is kind of an interesting new concept for a GUI, that it's actually a 3D GUI. It has that depth element in there. You can place it like any regular object. So you can consider this also for your project. If you want to play with placing interactive buttons or something in the world, you can use the world space render mode. But for a heads-up display, we wanted to follow the player camera around. So we want it basically to always be on the screen, always visible on the screen. If I turn this way, I don't want to just kind of lose sight of it. So I want to be placing it in screen space. And I want to have it attached to a camera in this case. So now I have told the canvas that it's supposed to follow a camera, and it's going to be rendered in screen space. Anything, sorry. So if I go in here now, you can see how the canvas, this is the image that I attached to the canvas, that it now follows my camera around, just like we expect. There's a very nice thing that you can do with the transforms of GUI elements. So regular game objects, they all have transforms. We know that. Like that's the basic information that every game object has, is the location in space and how you transform it to go there, get there, and rotate it, and things like that. All GUI elements, they have a so-called rect transform. They have a transform with a little bit of extra information in it. And this extra information allows these GUI components to actually transform themselves in some interesting ways. And here's a very interesting, cool thing that the rect transform has. You can tell it how to align with the screen, with the canvas that it is on. Right now, this little icon there tells us that it's going to try to be in the center. This image is going to try to be in the center at all times. But if we do like select the upper right as a possible target there, and then we can actually see also in this down here, I'm actually placing the image. I'm just moving the image around like that. Okay. So if you want to change the sizes of any GUI elements, if you want to manipulate the rect transform of a GUI element, you use this button here to the furthest to the right. When you change the regular transform, you usually use these buttons here, like this is to the location of it and the rotation and the scaling. But if you want to change some of the extra things that GUI elements have, you can press the GUI edit button. And now you have some more controls here in the image that you can manipulate. I mean, you can manipulate the size of the image like that. And you can place the image on the canvas somewhere. And you can also change the size of the canvas. Oh, actually, no, I can't. Okay, you can place this here. But notice this little star that is in the upper right corner of the canvas. This actually indicates that this object is anchored at that corner of the canvas. And so if I were to change the size of the canvas, you can see that it follows that corner up there. If I change this, it does not move. If I change this, sorry, the image does not move. It's only when this corner moves that the image moves with it. And this is what I selected when I did this here. I can select which corner, which part of the underlying canvas this GUI element is following. So if I switch to the other corner, for example, then now it won't move when I change this or this, but it will move when I change this. So it's really relative to that anchor point that I'm actually moving the element. So if I take the upper right corner, that's a kind of a typical place for a GUI element, and I can move this. But wherever I drop it, even if I drop it down here, it is going to follow that upper right corner. So it kind of makes sense to place it near the upper right corner like that. And the anchor point is there, so now it's going to follow it. And if we try running it, you will see that, you know, as the screen expanded and everything, it's always going to try to stick to that corner. Let's go around. Okay. So this image, there's nothing really in the image, so maybe we should just pick something. There's a background there that is can quickly put there. I can put transparency here in the color, so it's like that. Maybe a little bit more like that. Now, yeah. One thing about images in the GUI, and this is maybe something you're familiar with, but the image type, you can select between different types. There's one very interesting thing that is often used in GUI elements, and that is that you are expecting a sliced image. This means that it treats the image as a 3x3 grid. Are you familiar with this concept, where it slices the image up into 9 parts, essentially, and then when you paste this image on top of a background and you resize the background, it is going to stretch these parts differently. It's going to do it independently. In fact, it's going to maintain the thickness of the outer border, the pixel widths in the outside border throughout the scaling and stretching, and only use the middle part to fill in between. If you think of it as If you think of it.
So it's like chat bubbles, kind of.
Sorry?
So it could work like chat bubbles.
Yeah, it could be in any size. And the borders are always going to look nice.
In there, it's gonna...
So for example, I mean, if you have a picture like this with the border like this, and a regular scaling up of this image would be like this, where the border gets really big. You know, the border grows as you scale things up. With a sliced image, then the border will remain exactly the same thickness. And the interior will scale up with the scaling up of the overall image. And this is very useful when you have images that represent exactly just the borders. So in this case here, this image gives us round corners and a darker edge. So we're using that image, it's called background. We're using that image for that image up there, this image GUI here. And it gives us that nice high detail image up there in the corner with a nice border and rounded corners. If I did something else like this, you can see now it's just using the image and scaling it up, and you can see how the scaling distorts the edges as I change the size of it. See, I mean, if I scale it up like this much, it's not pretty anymore. I kind of ruin it. But if I use sliced, then it preserves the pixel width on the edges. Okay, so now this is the background image, and then I can throw in there maybe a text. I'll put GUI text in there. The text is over here. Oops. I can move it. Oh. Here's the text. And I can type in the text. That. Change the color of the text. Thanks. Like that, and make it centered. So there it is. If the order matters. So if I put the, oops. You see up here in the hierarchy, if I put the text before the image, the text is going to appear behind the image. So you can see if I make it, if they make the image more opaque, the text will just disappear. But if I want the text in front, then I have to drag the text below the image. And now it's going to be rendered in that order. The image first and then the text. And then I'm going to add a strange thing just for the kind of a health bar type of thing. I'm going to put a scroll bar. And this was something that I saw a guy, Adam Bruns, on the internet. He was suggesting to use a scroll bar as a health bar. I thought that was kind of cool, so I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to put the scroll bar in here. So this is the health bar. But to make it into a health bar instead of a regular scroll bar, then you take the scroll bar and make the value be 0 and the size 1. So you look at this, and the size of the thumbing part of the scroll bar kind of looks like a health bar going up. So we can kind of use this. And we can make this element non-interactive, so no one else can come in and change it. Only we can change the length of the health bar here, not the program. I mean, sorry, not the user. And I can change the, oh, no, this is just the normal color. This is the pressed color, I think we can change. No, where's the color that, disabled, it is disabled, that's why. You can use green, like there. So that's a bit of green color. And the background there. Okay. So we have now a little bit of a, oh, sorry. What did I forget to do? Anyone? Why is the health bar right there in the middle of the screen? Huh? Yes, I have to take every individual element and make sure that they are also have the upper right as the anchor point, and also the scroll bar, upper right as the anchor point. So now when I play it, all three of them should be upper right. Yeah, both all up there. Perfect. And I'm going to group all of these things into a new part of the hierarchy called HUD. I'm going to put all of this under the HUD. And I'm going to call the scroll bar, I'm going to call it a health bar. And now for the HUD itself, just to interact with it, then it's useful to make some new scripts for the HUD. I'm going to create a HUD behavior script. And then inside the HUD behavior script, I'm just going to create a public method here for setting the health to some value. But I should find, yeah, I should, sorry. I should make sure that I get the, if you want to script the GUI elements, you have to use the UI, Unity Game Engine UI package, which allows you to then use any of the different, or interact directly with the different elements from the script. So I'm gonna, this is a script inside the HUD parent class, and I just want to find the actual GUI element. This should actually find the scroll bar game object, and this should find the component that controls the scroll bar. So health scroller now should point to this component. Oh, sorry, this component here. This component right here. Save this. And so setting the health is just a matter of talking to the health scroller then and set the size of it. That's it. Health scroller size. So now I have this head object basically that has a set health method, and that talks to the health bar itself. And so the last thing to do is to change the health, and I'm just going to do something very simple now and make it just happen randomly. Make a new player script. Here's the player behavior. here. Just in the update method. We'll just do it there. Here we go. So what we're trying to do here is that this is would be a script that is associated with the player that just changes the health according to a sign function. And I'm talking to the head. I'm talking to the head by just, of course, you notice that I put the head as a public member variable inside the player. This means that when we go into Unity and we select the player here, we see down here the head as a non-assigned object. And I can drag the head from here and drop it in here to give it a value. The reason why we're using this instead of find is that find does not find inactive objects. If for some reason any of these things are inactive at the beginning of the application, find is not going to find them and will just return null, and you can't talk to these objects even if they become active later. So the only way to make sure that you have a link to these things is to make it public and then just drag the object in here. So now we have written, like you basically made that a concrete reference to that object before you run the application. So now if we run it, we don't see anything. Great. Let's see. Was there maybe what we're, oh, there's the camera. Okay, I'm going to take out the main camera. We don't need it anymore. And we that's probably what happened. It switched to the main camera instead of first person controller camera. No, it's there. And let's see also, there's no camera specified there in the canvas, I think. Okay, I forgot to do this one thing here. I don't know why it was working before, but you see the canvas, when we specify that it's supposed to be in screen space and attached to a camera, you can indicate which camera it is attached to. And that's just a parameter here that you can, there's a public one, and you can drag any camera and drop it in there. Or any object that has a camera, you can drop it in there. So all I did was to drag the first person camera and drop it in here to tell it. So now the health is there. Health is not moving. So I need to debug this probably. It is saying health scholar. Is that not? Is that not? Did I not find this one? Health. Oh, it was health bar. Oh, bar. Let's try that again. So now we see it. Just change the name of it. So now the player object has a script that is talking to the head and giving the head a command through send message. And then the head is responding by changing different elements in the head display. So that's just, and you can of course put anything you want there. One more thing about the appearance. I'm using the default font for the health text there. This text is the default, or let's say Arial font. You can add more fonts to your project very easily. You can, for example, you can go and find your Windows folder, and inside the Windows folder you can find the font folder, which has all the fonts that are installed in Windows, like this. And in fact, all you have to do is to drag them over to your Unity project. So if you maybe make a folder here, like in my case, I made a folder called fonts, like that. And you can just drag anything from here into this, and it gets added as one of your fonts. And now any text that you have in the GUI, like this one here, you can now select the new font like that, and it shows up there. There's something called pixel perfect here for the canvas. If you think things are a little bit blurry, you can ask for some more pixel perfectness. Let's see, it's okay. I like this Euro style font here for that I had put in earlier. This one here, it's kind of a cool font. Okay, so that's the heads-up display, and then we will finish with quickly a menu, a main menu. And we'll do that by simply adding another, well, let's just create a game object here, an empty game object at the root level, at the very top. I don't want to have it. Yeah, okay, it's here. And we'll call it menu. And under this, we want to create another canvas. So I'll put the canvas under this menu here. And this canvas can be, it's not going to be part of any particular camera or anything. We'll just have it as an overlay on top of the screen completely. And under this canvas, we will have a an image and a button on it. It's a button. Where's the button? Yeah, I probably don't want to have it inside this. Sorry. Button. Yes, or button. Image, and we'll center both of these things. Actually, they're both centered. All right. And we'll put sorry. Now where's this canvas and this camera? Sorry, now I'm trying to align it up, and it shouldn't have to be this way, and that's why I'll change it a little bit. Okay. I've not quite mastered the overlay yet, but what we can do is to simply create a menu camera, and the menu camera is in here, and we have a menu canvas, and we place the menu canvas right in front of the menu camera, so we can see the canvas through the menu camera right there. So this is our menu, and this menu appears when you switch to this camera. Sorry. Yeah.
So if you turn on another camera.
Yeah, then the other camera will take over. So if I turn on the first-person controller now, we don't see the menu.
Okay, but is that not like resource heavy?
Ah, now the trick is to activate and deactivate them as we need.
Ah,
And but it won't be resource heavy. If the camera is not rendering anything that is visible on the screen, it is not going to take up resources in general. So it's not like it's trying to create a rendering somewhere else and then it never gets used. It will know that it's not being used. But in any case, what we have now is that we have this game object called menu, and within it we have a camera and a canvas that is set up. And we have two cameras now. We also have the first-person controller. We now want to have a mechanism that can switch between the two views. And we are going to make this mechanism such that when we hit the key, we want the menu. And I'm going to attach it to the first-person player controller behavior that we are listening to a certain key. So we will now inside this basically go and check to see if key down or up. Code escape, maybe. That's a typical thing for making a menu up here. So in theory here, we should be able to say, okay, now I want to switch to the camera that has the menu on it. And a very simple way to do this is that we already have to create a reference to the menu the same way we did with the head. And then we can, in this, we can basically activate it, activate that game object. Set active true. So if it's disabled, it will become enabled. But in addition to this, we want to disable we want to disable the HUD, well, in fact, we just want to disable the first-person controller because we don't want to be walking around the menu. So we can do this. This is ourselves, actually. False. And then we are out. So this would be enabling the menu game object, but disabling the first-person controller. And let's try this. And we'll start with the menu disabled, so we won't see the menu. And don't forget to drag the menu into the list of GUI objects that the player wants to interact with. So now let's see. They're here, and then press escape, and we get the menu. And this is important. One thing that is very important is that if we want to interact with buttons, we need the mouse. We need to be able to control the mouse and not have like a head look going on. So the first-person controller is not really good for interacting with menus and buttons. So you might want to disable the first-person controller when you do something like this, and this is exactly what we did. Now, we would like this button to bring us back. Let's say this is like resume, exactly. We want this button to resume. And the button programming in this type of new GUI system in Unity, actually it doesn't require any scripting. It doesn't require it, but you can do events, and this is through basically their event system. You can decide here, and when you press the button object, you get the component, and the component will show you the options for what you're going to do when the button gets clicked. And here you can actually set up the different messages being sent. So right now on click, nothing happens, but if I want something new to happen, I can press plus. And what do I want to do when we press the button? Yeah, we want to do two things. This will do the reverse of what we did earlier. We want to deactivate the menu, and we want to activate the first-person controller. So I just have to find these two objects here. First, we can do the first-person controller here. And what function do we want to call? We just want to call the set active function. The functions that you see here, when you press the game object, you select the game object that's supposed to receive the message, and then we get all the possible functions we can call. These are all the public functions available to us. And this is just the hierarchy, the inheritance. So it inherits all the public functions from this object, this, and all the way down to our own scripts down here. So if I want to set active is a member of the game object class, which this one inherits. So I can do here set active, and it's a Boolean, so I can set it either on or off. So I can say on. So now this is going to call this object, send this method set active on it, and give it the value of true. And at the same time, I want to give another event, send that one to the menu, which is down here somewhere. Also, this is all the objects we have. And that one, I want to do set active false. So here I'm basically doing with the mouse and clicking stuff, I'm doing the same thing I was doing in script earlier. But the button has this facility. And now I can play it. Press escape, I get the button, I press the button, and it goes back. And I can walk around. Now I have like an in-game menu here. So those are the two things I want to show you just to get started with the GUI, to create heads and also to create some kind of menus. And I suppose you could have any types of menus like this, set them up any way you want. Yeah.
How hard is it to increase the game possibly?
I don't think that is hard. I think there's a way to. Well, the thing is, you have to think about like what does it mean to freeze it, because if you. Yeah, exactly. I think you may have to do it a bit selectively, because I think there's a way to stop kind of time from progressing, but nothing is responsive, not even the GUI. But you have to be able to maybe tell certain subsystems to stop. I think, yeah, there's a way to do that. Actually, talk to Haftis about it, because he actually did that for our project, in our virtual Reykjavik project, to just freeze everything that was in the scene. But it can be a little trickier than it sounds, because like maybe what you're saying, because there are different things like physics, like rendering, and like AI or something like that. So that's the thing. So probably you want to.
You probably have to decide that in mind.
You might want to do that maybe just in the update functions to have some kind of a check to see what mode you're in, if you're in this mode or that mode, and then you just turn on the different modes. Exactly. Here then. All right, that's it. Thank you.